All right, what's up, guys? So I'm here to help you go over the final round nutrition guide. So first, I want to say that when it comes to nutrition, everybody is different, right? Everybody's going to have different dietary needs. Some of us have food allergies that we have to account for. Some of us don't like to eat certain foods, right? So when it comes to nutrition, what I found is I could write out a meal plan for anybody, down to the calorie. You're going to eat 5 ounces of rice. You're going to eat 6 ounces of chicken at this time. We could document everything and be as specific as possible. And what's going to happen is you're going to try it for a week and you're never going to do it again because it's very, very hard. So it's almost, there's a time and a place for everything. And yes, there's a time where we have to be very strict and very lean if we have a goal that we want to accomplish. Like, I need to get ready for my wedding day. Okay, well, we gotta put in this work. We gotta eat a certain way, right? If you're gonna be a bodybuilder, you have to eat a certain way because you have to stand on stage, right? So there's a time and a place for everything. But when it comes to general nutrition, we found that it's much easier to just focus on certain protocols, right? Because again, everybody eats differently. We have people who eat meat, people who don't, right? You might be a vegan, you might be a vegetarian. So the easiest thing to do is just to stick to certain protocols that work no matter what lifestyle you have, that work no matter, what dietary guidelines you might need to follow. And it's very, very simple. And it's a six-step protocol that we've come up with that as long as you stick to the protocol, pretty much everything that you want from nutrition is going to happen. If you want to lose weight, it's going to happen. If you want to put on muscle, it's going to happen. If you just want to be healthy and feel better throughout the day because the way we eat translates to the way we feel. And a lot of times we don't think about that, but if you're eating a lot of junk food, chances are you're going to not feel great. But if you're eating very, very clean all the time, you're going to feel a lot better. And that's just kind of the way it works. There's really nothing we can do about that. That's the way our body works. Our body isn't made to eat tons of processed, fatty foods. We're not built for that, right? So these protocols kind of just work with everybody, and there's little tweaks that we can make along the way that might be specific to you, but as long as you're sticking to the protocols, we have a good foundation, and that's really what we're trying to build, just a good foundation of nutrition that's very easy to follow, that you can do no matter what dietary guidelines you follow, no matter how you want to eat. And we've thrown in a cheat meal secret formula because I like pizza too. I'm trying to eat, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to eat cheeseburgers and fries just like everybody else. So we just got to, make sure that we plan accordingly. And as long as my protocols are always in place, it should be a lot easier to get that done. So without further ado, let's get to it. So we're going to start with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is probably, you guys can read the guide. I'm just going to kind of talk about each subject. So as far as intermittent fasting is concerned, that works no matter what you do. You can be a vegetarian, you could be a vegan, you could be a carnivore diet, meat only. It doesn't matter. Intermittent fasting, the benefits of that is simply that you're just not going to eat until a certain time. And when that happens, like say for me as an example, I wake up at 5 in the morning every day to come to the gym. So from 5 to about 1 o'clock, I'm not eating. So throughout that period, my body needs energy from somewhere. It's just going to constantly burn from my stored fat, which is why we love intermittent fasting as a way of losing weight and as a way of maintaining a certain weight while I can kind of get away with eating other foods that maybe don't always work well for me, right? So intermittent fasting is one of the easiest things you can do for that. Not to mention that there are a lot of other benefits that come with intermittent fasting, and we do have another sheet in the journal here that you guys can kind of just read up on all of the benefits of that. But number one is just adding in the fasting. If that's the only thing you do is just start intermittent fasting, I promise you're going to see some good results from that. Next one, number two, is water intake. So why water intake, right? Well, more than 75% of our body is water. So yes, we need water in for hydration. And then depending on, what's the right amount for you to drink, it's about half of your body weight. So if I weigh 150 pounds, I want to drink at least 75 ounces of water every day. But the major benefit of drinking water and drinking it consistently is that it does help clean you out, right? So if you've ever noticed when you go to the bathroom, sometimes it's darker and sometimes it's clear, right? So when it's clear, it just means that you're hydrated. So drinking a lot of water throughout the day keeps you hydrated. It helps flush out some of the stuff that, your body doesn't need, but it also keeps your stomach full. And that's something that we don't think about. Your stomach and brain work together. So anytime that my stomach is full or feels full, it sends a signal to my brain that, hey, we're full. We don't need any more food. So if you're filling it with food or if you're filling it with liquid, it doesn't really matter. It works the same. your stomach is full. It sends the signal to your brain, hey, we're full. We don't need any more food. So drinking water constantly throughout the day is really just like a great appetite suppressant, right? Because a lot of times we're not eating because we're hungry. We're eating because we're bored. That's like the random snacking and stuff. So if you're staying hydrated, it does help alleviate some of those hunger feelings. And if we're trying to be lean, if we're trying to fast throughout the morning where I'm normally hungry, drinking water helps a lot with that. The third one, protein intake. So this is no matter what you are, carnivore, vegetarian, vegan, you need to try and prioritize protein as a primary calorie intake. So the rule of thumb is you want 50% of your caloric intake on a daily basis to be protein. And that might sound crazy. You know, a lot of people are going, oh, that's way too much protein. But is it? Is it really? Because, it's one gram of protein is 4 calories, right? So if I take in 30 grams of protein, that's only 120 calories. So it's not high calorically, but it's a lot of grams of protein, and your body prioritizes that protein because your body prioritizes your muscle. That's what we're built for. We're not built to be huge or jacked, but our bodies work with muscles, right? So your body prioritizes anything that's going to help that because your body needs the muscles to function. So the more that you eat protein, the more that your body's going to use it for what you need. Not to mention that when you're taking in high amounts of protein, it is just like the water. It is a great appetite suppressant because your body takes a little bit longer to break it down. So if you're eating a lot of protein, your body takes a while to break it down because it wants everything it can possibly take from that fuel source. So it kind of just helps you stay full longer. So the general rule of thumb is anytime you have a meal, I want you to look at that meal and think to yourself, is half of this protein or is less than half of this protein? Your goal should always be that with every meal, half of whatever that meal is should be protein. Now, again, there's a time and place, right? Maybe my cheat meal is pizza. There's no protein on it. That's fine. But in general, right, other than cheat meals and other than, situations where it's unavoidable, anytime you eat a meal, you want half of that meal to be protein. Now, number 4, this is the biggest one. This is by far the most important. If you take anything else away from this, this is the most important one. Your first meal of the day should always be your biggest meal of the day. All right. Now, I've always liked drawing this little picture, but imagine a triangle, right? So the triangle is this way. So the point is up. The point is up means you have a little breakfast or no breakfast at all, bigger lunch, and an even bigger dinner. And that's typically the way normal people eat, right? Like you think like breakfast is small, lunch is even smaller, dinner is always a big meal. I want you to flip it. Imagine the pyramid now upside down. Your breakfast is the biggest meal of the day. Lunch is smaller. Dinner is even smaller. Why do we want you to eat that way? Because if your first meal of the day is the biggest, remember, and most of it is protein, like we want you to do, then your body's going to take a really long time to process that. So by the time you get to lunch, you're not that hungry, but you're still going to consume a meal. So it's going to be a little bit less than your breakfast. And then by the time you get to dinner, your body's still processing those 2 big meals. You don't need that much food at night. So number 5 is your last meal of the day should be the smallest and should consist of mostly protein and vegetable. Okay. Now, again, if you're a vegetarian, if you're a vegan, this is different. We specialize. I don't. That's not my specialty. But you should still consider that your smallest meal is your last meal of the day should always be the smallest meal of the day, and you still want to try to prioritize the protein. So, for anybody who is not vegetarian or vegan, that means you're going to have like a piece of chicken with some vegetables or a piece of steak or fish with some vegetables. That is your last meal. So now we're following the pyramid. Now our first meal is the biggest meal. We taper it down to dinner where it is the leanest and lightest meal of the day. And why mostly protein and veggie? Because the carbs and fats are our fuel source. So if I eat those first, my body will take everything it needs from that, which means that by nighttime, I don't need it anymore. I've already given my body what it needs. And your body is going to most likely store those carbs and fats. They're just going to store them like as body fat if you're eating them later at night, because again, it takes a while to process. So typically when we eat dinner, we're pretty close to bedtime, right? So you're not giving your body enough time to process those carbs and fats. But if you're taking the protein, even though it takes a long time, it's just protein. Your body typically does not store protein as body fat. It just takes from it for your body. So whereas carbs and fats do get stored. That's why we want that last meal to only be protein. And the last, Number 6, which is sugar intake. We want you to cut as much sugar out of your diet as possible. That does not mean cutting sugars from like fruits out. You know, if you're eating fruits, that's fine. You know, they're good to eat. But it is also different than having sugar, like a ton of sugar in your drinks, or like having sugary drinks, having a ton of sugar in your coffee, that kind of stuff. You know, eating things like candy, you know, like we want to limit the sugar as much as possible because your body pretty much just stores that as fat. We just don't need it. It's not necessary for our dietary function. And that's not to say, again, have a, like, you know, 1 or 2 sugars in your coffee in the morning. That's fine. But we want to avoid the sugary drinks. We want to avoid the sugary, you know, processed foods. If you can cut sugar out of your diet completely, I guarantee that you're going to have some really, really good changes. And that's something that you guys can all look up. You know, just look up, you know, what are the benefits of taking sugar out of my diet? You're going to find a lot of benefits, and maybe some things that you might be dealing with, like the way you're feeling, you know, the highs and lows of a sugar crash. Cutting those things out of your diet really just takes that all away and will help you to start feel a lot better. So that is our 6-step protocol. It is very simple. Make sure you're fasting. Make sure you're drinking your water. Make sure you prioritize protein. Your first meal is the biggest, your last meal is the smallest, and cut out all the sugar. If you hit all 6 of these steps consistently on a weekly basis for a few weeks, I guarantee you're going to have some really good results from that. So if you have any questions on this, if you need anything, you know, extra, just don't, you know, feel free to reach out to myself or Tracy, and we'd love to work with you a little bit more individually on these. Thanks, guys.